The election coming up, and of course, when it comes to our opportunity to vote, this is a democratic right and a privilege. It's a right and a privilege that a sector of society are fighting for. Yes, some young people at least are up in arms and demanding the right to vote from the age of 16. Of course, current voting age is 18. Somebody who believes we should strongly keep it at 18 is Jason Heale. He is Communications Manager from the Maxim Institute. Jason, kia ora. Thanks for your time today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, mate.
And can I ask, well, let's start with a personal question. Have you got teenage children?
I do have one teenage son. Yes, that's right.
Yes, yeah. And is part of your reason you're opposed to decreasing the voting age because, honestly, you imagine a younger, less mature version of yourself and you're thinking, I can't let that loose on democracy?
Right, mate. Yeah, he's going to be 15 next month, and
okay.
The thought of him voting in a year, I just don't think he's going to be capable. And then, like you say, I think of myself at that age, and I go, no way. No.
And seriously, his dad is the communications manager at a political think tank. If he hasn't got a chance, there's no hope for the rest of society, honestly. This has been kicked around a little bit, and including some judges that thought it was a very good idea. They believed that it was, against the Bill of Rights and democracy and all sorts of things for 16-year-olds not to be able to vote. The problem is none of the politicians agree with them, it would seem.
Yeah, that's right. So at the end of last year, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the Make It 16 campaign.
Yep.
You have to note, though, that there was no arguments put forward in opposition to that by the Attorney General.
Okay.
So it's basically the court just heard the arguments for making it 16. And then the majority decision was that it was inconsistent with the New Zealand Bill of Rights. And the thing is, the Supreme Court in New Zealand, it's not like the Supreme Court in America, where they make a ruling and it changes the way that the law operates. Here in New Zealand, they are there to kind of interpret the law. They don't write or rewrite laws, and they advise our political process. So they're not there to say, now we have to make it legal for them for 16 and 17-year-olds to vote.
So in America, for example, the Supreme Court ignores what the rest of the legislature thinks, and in New Zealand, it's the other way around. Would that be fair enough?
Yeah, that's a good basic summary. Yeah, that's right, mate. Yeah. So
exactly.
What's happened following on from that is that just last week there was a new bill introduced into Parliament by Kieran McAnulty to have 16 and 17-year-olds vote in local elections, because I don't know if you remember at the end of last year there was talk about like the supermajority that they need to change it for 16 and 17-year-olds to vote in the national election. So they've gone, well, let's take it a step down and make it them eligible to vote in local elections. So that's kind of what happened last week.
And speaking of national, I mean, honestly, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Sorry, Mr. Luxon, but national, there's no way that national are going to approve this because 16 and 17-year-olds, if they could vote, they wouldn't vote national. In fact, some people would think nobody under the age of 55 is going to vote national, so it's not in their interests. Younger people tend to vote left, so the right aren't going to approve that. This is never going to get across the line. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assumption. Is in times past, we've noted that people tend to get more conservative as they get older. And the younger they are, the more liberal they will vote, the more they are susceptible to peer pressure at that age as well. So whatever their mates are doing, they'll talk about it. And they go, oh, I don't like this. And, this guy's trying to cramp my style, man. And, whatever. And they'll vote for the freedom and the liberty that
Jason, can I just ask a supplementary question? Were you a teenager in the 60s? It sounds like you might have been.
No.
Hey man, he's trying to cramp my style, man. Peace out.
That shows how old I am. That's my.
No, that was very, very entertaining. Hey, I mean, yes, okay, it's going to be local instead of national, but not even that much. It's kind of like, yes, you get the right to participate in democracy, but it's rights with trainer wheels rather than giving you the keys to the Harley. Is that fair enough?
That's right. Yeah. That's a good description, Andrew, because they can vote, but that's about all they can do is vote in the local body elections. They can't vote on community boards. They can't vote on alcohol licensing boards, and they still can't sit on juries. So this bill creates a little subset, I guess, of people called special electors, and all they get is the right to vote in local body elections.
So the few hundred, if this should pass, and we'll get to that in a moment, but the few hundred 16 and 7-year-olds who might consider wanting to vote will be able to do so in a very limited way, and the rest of them don't care. Is that, again, is that a fair assessment?
Where the turnout for last year's was 40%, I think. So it's the elections that, they have the mail-in votes and people kind of put it down and forget to vote and forget to take it in, then they pull it out and they're like, oh, that was last week. I should have. And then,
so that was me, actually. Thanks for rubbing it in. But yeah, some people are thinking, well, honestly, some teenagers, some adults, in fact, are going, what do you mean I can't vote on my phone? I do everything on my phone.
Right.
It's this postal ballot or even going into a voting booth on polling day, should it ever come to that, it doesn't necessarily fit with the younger generation. I mean, this is sort of tinkering around the edges. A time for a broader rethink of how we do democracy in New Zealand, do you think?
I think probably we need to look at our constitutional framework and how that kind of all fits together, because unlike some other nations like Australia or the United States, we don't have a written constitution. Our constitution is kind of piecemealed together from various parts of law and things like that. So it would be good for us to have a conversation at least about how we might bring that all together and make it a cohesive unit so that we can all point at something and go, this is our constitution, this is what constitutes our democracy, and this is reasons why we've chosen to do it this way.
Again, we'd need an absolute majority on that, and this seems increasingly unlikely as we head towards the election. How does this compare internationally? I imagine in Finland, 12-year-olds can vote, but for the rest of the world, what's the consensus?
Yeah, look, out of 236 countries or nations in the world, only 17 have a voting age lower. Only 17 of those have a voting age lower than 18. Some are 16, some are 17. Some have voting ages higher. I think the highest I saw was 25 in one country. And so the consensus is that at least at a minimum 18 is kind of the minimum standard for voting internationally.
The other elephant in the room is, why is the government, with their absolute majority, seconds on the clock, only a few hours left of time in the House, and most of that taken up by valedictory speeches of retiring MPs, why would they take this precious time to run this up the flagpole when it has almost zero chance of success? Any cynical theories on this one, Jason?
Got a few cynical theories about it. I think you're right in that it does seem strange for them when they've got, I think, 3 sitting weeks left before campaigning. They close for the election campaigns.
Yep.
They've got, I think, 12 bills that they introduced under urgency last week as well that they've got to debate. And you're right, the business was interrupted from 2 valedictory speeches last week. And so then why put this? And this isn't one of the bills that's gone through under urgency.
This is the opposite of urgent, really, isn't it? It's never going to cross the line anyway, and it's a watered-down version, and it's not what the people that were campaigning for it wanted in the first place. Not even those people that were fighting this to the Supreme Court want this, let alone Chris Luxon.
Yeah, and so it definitely is not going to get across the line in the 3 sitting weeks. I think they've got, that means like 6 days worth of debates to debate all of this and before they close down Parliament, get through all their business. So it's never going to get across the line. And depending on the outcome of the election, which seems more and more likely that there'll be a change of government, a new government's not going to pick it up and run with it, as you pointed out. So it just seems like almost a token gesture of like, look, guys, we ran out of time. We really tried, and we didn't quite manage to get there. But hey, next time.
And then they can blame the current opposition, who may well form the next government, if polls are anything to go by in that regard. I mean, the good thing, I suppose, that we can take from this, Jason, is that it's going to be at least a couple of cycles before your 15-year-old son is able to vote. You've got plenty of time to school him up in the way he should go, and that sort of thing as well. And honestly, it may be even longer than that. An important discussion, I suppose, about the way we should vote, but a little bit of a red herring as we're coming down to the wire for the upcoming election.
That's right. Yeah. So I think, one of the arguments that they have is we want more people to vote.
Yes.
And I took a look at our voter turnout. It's 82% of eligible people turn out to vote. When you compare that to Australia, who has mandatory voting, 90% of them. So still 10% of eligible voters in Australia decide, I'll take a fine rather than go out and vote. So we're actually quite good at turning out to vote. So I don't think that there's a problem with that. Although maybe this election, there seems to be this apathy in the air that people seem to be going, I don't know if I'm going to vote, or can I be bothered, or this election was not really interesting. So I would encourage people to get out and vote. I'd encourage them to look at the candidates, to check the policies that are being announced, to really look into the local candidates that they're going to vote for, and get out there on election day and tick their boxes and make their choice, because that's part of how we to set the future of our country.
Hey, this conversation we'll be having, well, a much clearer version of it is posted on the Maxim website. Thank you for writing this article. That is at maxim.org.nz. People can find out more. There's podcasts, there's election discussions, there's lots of stuff on policy issues. Thank you, Jason, for the work that you do. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, mate.